The first time Margaret walked into the police station, she was clutching a photograph of her son, so tightly her hands shook. Her voice cracked as she told them he was missing. But instead of urgency, she was met with smirks. The detectives chuckled, waved her off, and told her he was probably just another runaway teen. What they didn't know was that within weeks, their laughter would turn to horror, because deep in the woods outside of town, a secret was waiting. And when it was finally uncovered, it would not only shatter Margaret's world, but expose a failure so devastating that the entire community would never forget. To support this channel, kindly like and hit the subscribe button for more thrilling content. Margaret knew something was wrong the very moment her son, Daniel, didn't come home that night. 17 years old, quiet, thoughtful, and fiercely responsible. Daniel wasn't the type of boy who disappeared without explanation. He texted his mom if he was running late. He called if his plans changed. But that evening, as the hours dragged on and her calls went unanswered, an icy dread settled into her bones. By morning, Margaret's fear had only grown stronger. She went to the police, desperate for help. But instead of launching an immediate search, the detectives on duty downplayed her concerns. He's probably out with friends, they told her, or blowing off steam. When she pressed harder, begging them to take her seriously, they laughed. Their dismissal stung like a wound. She left the station humiliated but not defeated. At home, the silence was unbearable. Daniel's jacket still hung by the door. His phone charger was in the wall. His school books were stacked neatly on his desk. These weren't the signs of a runaway. These were the signs of a boy who had vanished. Margaret refused to wait for the police. She began her own search. She called every one of Daniel's friends, his teachers, even the owner of the diner where he sometimes ate after school. Nobody had seen him. She plastered the town with flyers, her phone number scrawled in bold black ink. Each night she barely slept, pacing the floor, staring out the window, praying he would walk up the driveway. Every time she returned to the police with new information, she was met with the same patronizing tone. To them, she was nothing more than an anxious mother. To her, she was fighting for her son's life. Then, 10 days after Daniel vanished, she found something. Walking the path he usually took home from school, she spotted a piece of fabric caught on a fence near the railway tracks. Tugging it free, her heart dropped. It was the same color as the hoodie Daniel had been wearing that day. Shaking, she rushed it to the police station, hoping this would finally force them to act. But the detectives barely glanced at it. Could belong to anyone, one said with a shrug. Another smirked. Margaret left in tears, anger boiling beneath her grief. That night, she returned to the tracks with nothing but a flashlight. The woods beyond felt suffocating, eerily quiet. As her beam cut through the trees, she froze. In the distance, she thought she heard something. A muffled cry, faint and fleeting. She called out, but the forest stayed silent. Whether it was real or just her mind playing tricks, she couldn't be sure. But one thing was certain, those woods were hiding something. As the days dragged into weeks, whispers spread through town. Some locals claimed they'd seen a black truck parked near the high school in the days before Daniel vanished. Others swore they noticed a man loitering at the edge of the woods. Margaret clung to every scrap of information and carried them back to the police. But time and again, she was dismissed. "You've been watching too many crime shows," a detective sneered. Still, she kept pushing. Her mother's instinct screamed that something was horribly wrong. 3 weeks later, the truth surfaced. A hunter, trekking through the Riverton woods, caught the scent first. Something foul, thick in the air. Following it, he stumbled upon a shallow pit. At first, he thought it was an animal carcass, but as he brushed away the dirt, his stomach lurched. A human hand. The authorities descended on the forest overnight. Bright floodlights illuminated the trees. Yellow tape stretched across branches, and officers in gloves combed the earth for evidence. The pit was carefully unearthed. Inside lay the remains of not just one person, but 3. Daniel was among them. Buried beside him were 2 other teenagers, reported missing from nearby towns. All three had been dumped like discarded trash. The same detectives who had laughed at Margaret's pleas now stood white-faced, their arrogance shattered. The investigation moved quickly now. Tire tracks were found near the site, pressed deep into the mud. They were matched to a delivery van, a model registered to a man living on the outskirts of town. When agents raided his property, the nightmare only deepened. In a shed behind his house, they discovered clothing, notebooks, and personal belongings belonging to the victims. Hidden cameras, journals filled with chilling notes, evidence of a man who had been watching teenagers for years. The journals revealed the final, devastating truth. Daniel had noticed the man lurking around the school. He wasn't afraid for himself, he was afraid for his younger friends. Daniel confronted him, trying to protect others. That act of courage made him a target. The man was arrested, charged with multiple counts of abduction and murder. The case shook the community to its core. Justice was finally in motion, but far too late. For Margaret, the discovery was both the end and the beginning. She had been right all along. Daniel hadn't run away. He hadn't abandoned her. He had been taken. And her instincts that had been mocked and dismissed, had been screaming the truth from the very start. The detectives who had once laughed at her were forced to face the weight of their failure. Their arrogance had delayed the search. Their inaction had allowed a predator to keep hunting. They would forever be remembered, not for solving the case, but for the lives lost under their watch. The tragedy became more than just one family's nightmare. It became a warning, a reminder to law enforcement everywhere. Never ignore a missing persons report. Never dismiss the voice of a desperate parent. And never underestimate the quiet terror lurking in the places we think are safe. Because sometimes the case you laugh at is the very one that will haunt you forever. Thanks for watching.